Hi everybody, happy Friday. Halifax have just released their December 2022 house price index, and the headlines are that house prices have now fallen for 4 straight consecutive months, and the total amount that's come off their average house price in that 4 months is this amount of money, just under £13,000, and which is about 4.3% down off their high. I've linked to all of this below. And in this video, I want to help everyone who's thinking of moving, whether you're a buyer or a seller or both, to understand the effects of time lag on reporting so that you can work out what's happening at the coalface today and, more importantly, what's happening in the coming months. All right? So, one moment while I have a sip of coffee. Ooh, it's too hot. So, back in August, I sat at this table and did a video called 8 Reasons UK House Prices Are Going to Collapse. And that was in August 2022, and I've linked to that video below if you haven't seen it. It's worth seeing because if you watch, I've linked to 3 videos below. One from February 2022, almost a year ago, which you'll see is when I very first started to suspect that the housing market was going to turn from a seller's market to a buyer's market. One from May 2022 that I did just for estate agents to warn them that the housing market had in fact turned. And so it was May. And then in August, I did the 8 reasons why UK house prices are going to collapse. And yes, collapse is a very dramatic word, but in this video, maybe you'll begin to accept my reasons for my choice of the word collapse, because we've seen 4 straight months of house price reductions, but this is for housing transactions that were agreed before and perhaps just around the time of the mini budget in September and when interest rates started to spike up. What that means is we have not yet seen the full effects of increasing interest rates and the political and financial market turmoil coming through in these house prices, which is why I think that what's going to happen next, so in other words, in February, when we start to see January's figures, etc., is that these house price falls are going to get steeper, okay? Why? Because of the time lag effect. Now, if you look, I've linked to the full 4-page PDF Halifax house price report for December below this video, wherever I'm able to do that. And you can see their full breakdown, monthly, quarterly, and annual price changes. Now, when the ONS reports land registry figures, that's for the whole market. It is the most accurate, but that's got a 5 or 6 month time lag on it. When the Halifax and Nationwide report their house price index figures, that's got a shorter time lag of, roughly speaking, about 10 weeks. So if we're looking at December now, and we go back 2 to 3 months from December, we're looking at September, October transactions, or when the mortgage approvals were. It's also worth remembering that the Nationwide and Halifax house price indices include approved transactions, some of which don't go on to complete, and it only takes into account transactions where mortgages were used. It does not take into account transactions for cash purchases. That's why the figures are all a bit different between the different indices. Okay, but nevertheless, it's one of the best indicators that we've got. I think off the top of my head, Halifax is about 14% of all transactions are done with Halifax mortgages or Nationwide. I could be wrong on that. Forgive me if I am. Okay, so the Halifax house price index graph, if you look at it, and the dark blue line here is the annual price change. It peaked in what it's saying June 2022, okay? So that was for transactions that were actually being agreed in March, April 2022. I don't know if you can see that, sorry if you can't. Okay, so when I sat here in August and said house prices were falling, it's because they already had started to, but we didn't start to see that until October 2022 when Halifax announced the August house price figures and we were able to start to see them coming down, okay? So just factor that timeline in. Halifax and Nationwide have got 2 to 3 month delay, on house price, on the time lag of transactions. The ONS has got a 5 or 6 month delay. This is all very confusing. And we are in January 2023. We're seeing house prices from the Halifax for December 22, which is for transactions that were agreed or initiated around about 2 to 3 months earlier, so September, October, so just right around the point of turmoil. So that we're just beginning to see the very beginnings of the effect of that turmoil, which was the first time when people in the mainstream media started to talk on a more frequent basis about, housing market, maybe the housing market's turning, okay? So how does that translate into sellers' prices now and sellers' expectations? I think what a lot of people are starting to see, if you've been watching this closely for a while, is that there are a lot of sellers out there who've not been watching this closely for a while, who think that they're still going to get prices from last summer. Not all of them, obviously. House prices are falling. But there are a lot. And there's been a lot of, we'll put our house on the market in the new year, or we'll wait to the spring for when the market's busier. And what I really want to get across to anyone watching this video who is just started selling or is thinking of selling or about to sell their house is that I hope you'll see that this data proves to you that waiting is almost certainly going to result in you getting a lower price for your house than you will if you sell it sooner rather than later. And if you are on the market now with an asking price and you're wondering why you're not getting any offers, it's because buyers who've been watching the market closely for perhaps longer than you have are aware that they shouldn't be overpaying, and the market is definitely falling. There's no question about it now. House prices are now definitely falling. It's confirmed by the ONS, by Halifax, and by Nationwide, just varying figures in different places. But the Halifax also, in its press release today, is saying that they're expecting now 8% a fall in average house prices in 2023. Now, you might go, what, 8%? That's nothing, right? 8% off the highs is nothing because we had really big house price increases. And yes, you'd be right about that. But bear this in mind. To my knowledge, there has never been an accurate prediction by the house price indices of how far house prices are going to fall just before they've started falling. Going back to 2008, none of these guys predicted how steep it would fall. So if they are predicting 8% falls, you can almost bank on the fact that they are going to be deeper and steeper falls than that. Okay? Now, buyers are factoring that in, sellers are struggling, and I've actually spoken to a few people who are buying and selling, and they're having a little bit of a, oh God, are house prices falling? Because I want them to fall for what I'm buying, but I don't want them to fall for what I'm selling. And so there's a little bit of time being taken for the reality of the situation to sink in. And if you are upsizing, then some people say, well, it doesn't matter because if the house you're buying is coming down in price as well as the house you're selling, then it works out actually you're better off. Well, if you're upsizing in price, one of the problems is that there is a timing effect. The higher up the housing price level you go, the slower those prices are to actually fall. And so there is a time lag here, which might mean if you're upsizing, you want to wait, watching the value of your current house drop, so that the bigger ones come down. And sorry, I'm fumbling my words here, but you know what I'm saying. Or as someone messaged me yesterday and said, actually, although there's a bit of a risk, maybe getting it sold now and then moving into rented or something temporary or family or whatever it is, and then waiting a little bit and buying later might make sense. That it depends on your personal risk assessment and risk appetite, because there's always the chance that something happens and house prices stop falling and suddenly shoot back up again, and you're caught between two stools, having sold your own home, unable to catch the flying away market on the upside. There's always that risk, guys. I think that risk is extremely low as we speak here in January 2022. So let me just recap what I see has been happening. Okay? At the coalface of deals being agreed, prices began falling in June 2022. All right? May, June 2022, at the point of agreement, house prices were starting to drop then, but there is no data to support that. There never is any data to support exactly what's happening at the coalface on those days. But that's why I did that video back in May, which I've linked to below. In August and September, we saw the first house price indices confirming that house prices began to fall. So we've just seen the fourth straight month of falls, which is the longest period of house price falls since the 2008 house price drop. Okay, I won't use the word crash or collapse or correction. House prices dropped. The last time they've dropped 4 months in a row was 2008. So one of the things that's become clear to me in the last few weeks talking to people is that sellers really are, on the whole, there are exceptions, so intelligent, forward-thinking sellers who are just being dispassionate and disconnecting their emotion from this and going, what's actually happening, what should we do? Those sellers with good agents are pricing realistically and selling their properties now. I actually had 2 people yesterday who said they've just sold, because they've been listening to my advice since last year, they have sold and they're relieved that they've sold, okay? But there's still a lot of people in the mainstream market who have not been watching closely, who have not yet come to terms with the fact that house prices are falling. And for those of you who think this is negative, I don't think it is negative. My motivation here is to help more people move more easily, okay? And think about it. If you're an estate agent watching this or a mortgage broker watching this, what's going to make transactions happen faster? Is it going to be hoping for buyers to pay up? Or is it going to be talking to sellers and saying, guys, the market's coming down, you need to get more realistic? The more realistic sellers are, the sooner people can move on to the next phase of their life. And if you're a seller, you need to do that too. So please don't make the mistake of thinking that by waiting now, you're going to get more money in the spring. Now, there might be certain markets for large country houses where that's the case, where higher up the value chain, that might be the case. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on that. There might be exceptions where that's the case in areas where there's very, very little property for sale. What does come on is very desirable and there are still plenty of cash buyers around. There will be pockets where it's not the case. But if you are in the mainstream, and by that I mean 400,000 and below of the most frequently sold property, which is a 3-bedroom semi-detached property, is the most frequently sold property, and that's your marketplace, you need to, if you're needing to sell, do it sooner rather than later, unless you're upsizing, in which case there isn't such a hurry. But even if you're upsizing, don't make the mistake of clinging on for a higher price if you need to get moved, right? If moving is important, if the timing of your move is important and you don't want to wait, talk to your agent and say, what do I need to do to get this sold now so that I can get on with my move? All right, guys, I hope that's helpful. There is some frustration bubbling up amongst buyers with sellers who are just not coming to terms with reality. I hope that the data here is now starting to support the reality. Look at the data, guys. Look at the data, right? That's 4 straight months of falling house prices, all right? If you're a seller and you're thinking that you're going to get more money by waiting in the spring, well, for the reason I stated earlier, which is we've not yet seen the full effects of the mini budget and rising interest rates that happened in October and November. We've not yet seen the effects of that. For that reason, I think these house price falls are going to continue in January, February, March, and probably get steeper. Now, if we've just seen a 4.3% fall in the Halifax house price index in the last 4 months, and it's going to get steeper in the next 3 or 4 months, then we could be looking at 10 to 12% drops in 6 months, which annualized is 20 to 24% drops. Okay, so that's the annual house price change rate we could be looking at in the next few months, right? 20 to 24% annualized, or year on year, if you were to annualize it, price drops coming in the next quarter or 2. The question I get most often is when a house price is really going to start getting realistic, and the truth is I don't think that's going to happen until quarter 3, because I think there are a lot of people who are very, very slow to cotton on, and also who don't appreciate the effect of the time lag in reporting, and their reality is not going to slap them in the face hard enough to wake up and drop their sales prices if they need to move until quarter three. Okay, which is always when I've said you're going to start to see the real bargains coming on. So we're going to see this slow, delusion and denial of what's happening to house prices amongst sellers, which is going to be frustrating because it's going to keep transaction levels smaller than they could be for the next 1 to 2 quarters. Slowly it'll start to dawn in quarter 2, and then in quarter 3 2023 you'll start to see house prices fall, or sellers actually dropping prices being more realistic. And that's when transaction volumes might pick up again as we head into 2024. It's a glacially slow process. And what can be done to speed that up? Well, very little really, other than spreading the word. So rather than just saying to sellers, hey, look, house prices are falling, they're going to go, well, I don't think they are. Spread the word of this reasoned explanation for why house prices not only have already been falling for 4 months, but about to fall faster and further in the next 1 to 2 quarters. Therefore, if you're a seller that needs to move, you don't need to move. You might decide, actually, no, we're not going to move. That's fine. That's your prerogative, obviously. But if you're a seller that needs to move and wants to upsize, if you don't drop your price to a realistic level on your current property, you ain't going to move anywhere. That's the reality. So, guys, I hope that was helpful. The most helpful thing you can do to get the market moving is to share this video with sellers and with agents who are trying to argue that the market price is not dropping. And if you're an agent saying, Charlie, please shut up about falling house prices, I would argue that actually the opposite is true. If you start talking to people saying, yeah, house prices are falling now, house prices are falling now, house prices are falling now, you're going to be getting more deals done. So that's why I think agents need to stop resisting and spinning the message and go, well, yeah, they're softening a bit. We see them coming down a tiny bit. I mean, Rightmove's 2% house price drop forecast in 2023. I'd love to ask them a year from now why they think that. Guys, thank you very much. Follow me on Twitter for daily updates, moving_Charlie. And if you're a first-time buyer or an upsizing seller looking to remortgage, or a remortgager, someone who's been thinking of selling is now deciding just to remortgage and stay where you are, please talk to my fantastic hand-picked Magic Mortgage team, mhwc.co.uk/mortgage. Pop your details in there and I'll put you in touch with them. Thank you very much. Remember, buy now, but just don't overpay, even when the market's falling. And if you're a seller, you need to get realistic, reliable, and what's the word? Sorry, never mind. I'll come on to that one next time. More soon, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.